Hey everyone, it's Skipper Mark, and today we are going to compare Lake George in New York to Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire. Thanks for watching and have a great day. I picked these two lakes because they're both very large and they're two of the most popular tourist destinations in the Northeast. Lake George is approximately 200 miles due north of New York City. It's roughly 32 miles long, 3 miles wide, 187 feet deep, and approximately 28,000 acres. Lake Winnipesaukee is approximately 100 miles northwest of Boston. It's about 21 miles long, quite a bit wider at 9 miles wide, 180 feet deep, and about 45,000 acres. When people think of a lake, one of the things they often think about is boating, and that's what I want to talk about next. But before I do, I want to talk about the water and the clarity of the water. Both Lake George and Lake Winnipesaukee are natural lakes. Lake George gets most of its water from streams that flow directly into the lake and a little bit from groundwater and rainwater. Lake Winnipesaukee gets most of its water from underwater springs and a little bit from runoff and rainwater. The water in both lakes is very, very clean, and it's actually used for drinking water in the areas around the lake, so please be careful and don't pollute either lake. Both Lake George and Lake Winnipesaukee are really fun lakes to explore. They both have a lot of coves and inlets and islands to cruise around. Lake George has approximately 170 islands, and Lake Winnipesaukee has about 264. On Lake Winnipesaukee, most of the islands are privately owned and inaccessible to the public. They often have huge houses on them, and you just can't go anywhere on the islands. Some of the islands on Lake George are also private, but most of them are open to the public. New York has done a really good thing and given the islands back to the people. They have opened them up for camping and day use with a very reasonable fee. As far as the land around the lake, Lake George has a really nice setup. The southern half of the lake is available for development, and anybody that is fortunate enough to be able to get land can develop it. It's very populated also. But the northern half of the lake is in Adirondack Park, and development is prohibited. In fact, in much of the northern area, there's not even any roads that you can take that will bring you close to the lake. You have to hike down a mountain to get to the lake. Lake Winnipesaukee, on the other hand, is a developmental free-for-all. Most of the direct lakefront properties are gone, and there's no more land that anybody can buy to develop. Because of this, the builders have to build condo complexes far away from the land, but they do somehow secure water rights so that owners of boats can come down and swim and dock their boats nearby. If an older house goes up for sale, it usually sells very quickly and is immediately torn down so a bigger house can be built. Both Lake George and Lake Winnipesaukee are concerned about keeping their waters clean, and they have different approaches on how to do that. To use your boat on Lake George, you have to go through a convoluted process. First, you have to register it with the Lake George Park Commission, and then you have to take it to an inspection station to see if it has any invasive species on it. If it does, they'll give it a power wash and a sticker, and once that's all done, you're good to go and put it in the water. Lake Winnipesaukee doesn't have any special registration requirements, but when you launch your boat, the dock attendant will walk around and check your boat and trailer for invasive species. I'm not actually sure what they do if they find something, because there's no power washing stations nearby. We were only at Lake George for a little while and couldn't explore everywhere, but it looks like there's 3 state-owned boat ramps around the lake, and it also looks like the private marinas let you launch a boat as well. According to the website lakewinnipesaukee.net, there's 17 boat ramps on the lake. Some are owned by towns, and some are owned by marinas. Overall, both lakes are really fun to boat on. If I had to pick, I would say Lake Winnipesaukee is the better lake because it's much bigger, it has boat ramps all over the place, and you don't have to go through a bunch of hoops like you do on Lake George with having to register your boat, taking it to an inspection station, and all of that. One thing that's really different between Lake George and Lake Winnipesaukee are the towns on the lake. Lake George has a couple towns, but there's really one main area, the town of Lake George. In the winter, the population is only a few thousand, but in the summer it grows to over 50,000 and gets very busy. On Lake Winnipesaukee, there's Meredith, Center Harbor, Wolfeboro, Alton, Guilford, and Laconia, plus a few others too, but each of those is relatively small with only a few thousand people. Laconia is the biggest and has around 17,000, so even though a lot of people visit the area, they're spread out and not congregated in one area like they are in Lake George. Lake Winnipesaukee is a great lake to travel around by boat because you can get to any town from any town, and you can usually do it quicker than by going in car. Someone might be staying in Meredith and want to head over to Wolfeboro for the day, and it's about a 20-mile boat ride, but you can do that pretty quickly versus an almost hour ride around the lake. Even with the towns having a lot of dock space, you can sometimes have to wait up to an hour to get to a dock in Meredith. Parking is generally limited to 3 hours at any of the docks, so if you want to stay longer, that can be an issue. Parking at the town docks on Lake Winnipesaukee is free, but if you stay too long or stay overnight, you will get a ticket. The town of Lake George also has docks where you can park, but they charge $3 an hour, though you can park for up to 20 hours. Overnight parking is not allowed at any of the town docks on Lake Winnipesaukee or on Lake George, so if you're on vacation and staying overnight, you either have to take out your boat or stay at a hotel that has a dock. One area that the lakes differ vastly is if you want to spend a night on your boat. Basically, at Lake Winnipesaukee, this isn't allowed. Anchoring your boat overnight is illegal anywhere on Lake Winnipesaukee except at one of the designated moorings approved by the state. Unfortunately, those are on a permit system, and the permits sell out really quickly and you'll never get one. If you're a homeowner, you can also have a dock in front of your house, and hotels can have docks as well. If you're just boating around the lake and say, hey, I like this spot, I want to spend the night, you can't just throw out an anchor and tie up your boat and spend the night there. Even if you're not on the boat, you can't just anchor your boat and leave it. Lake George, on the other hand, encourages boaters to spend the night on their boats. There's bays where you can anchor and spend the night, and there's campgrounds where you can sleep in your boat on a dock but still have access to the land for campfire and bathrooms and things like that. If you just want to explore the area and have to park your car, both areas are similar, but I'm going to give the edge to Lake Winnipesaukee, just because in the smaller towns such as Meredith, you don't have to pay to park. You only really have to pay at Laconia, Weirs Beach area. In Lake George, you have to pay to park everywhere, but both lakes have a lot of parking available, so it shouldn't be a problem wherever you go. When people go on vacation, they usually like to eat out at restaurants, and this is an area where Lake George and Lake Winnipesaukee differ. Because Lake George is so big, there's a lot of different restaurants. There's small family-run restaurants, and there's also chains such as Auntie Anne's, in case you're in the mood for a pretzel. Lake Winnipesaukee tends to be smaller, family-run restaurants, but there's a lot to choose from as well. There is one McDonald's in Meredith, but that's the only fast food restaurant we found in the area. I'm guessing if you go to Laconia, there's probably chain restaurants there as well. One area where the lakes really differ is with their hotels. Lake George has a huge variety of hotels, and a lot of them. They have large national chains such as the Marriott, and they also have smaller family-run hotels. Lake Winnipesaukee tends to have more family-run hotels, and they have some inns, though in Meredith there is a large hotel chain, but it's not a Marriott or a chain like that. It's still a smaller group. There's Church Landing, Bay Point, the Chase House, and the Inn at Mill Falls. Both Lake George and Lake Winnipesaukee are popular wedding destinations. Lake George looks to have one hotel, the main conference area, where they have weddings, and they have a really nice grassy area overlooking the lake. Because Lake Winnipesaukee is so spread out, there's multiple areas that you can have a wedding. The ones we're most familiar with are the Chase House, which sets up a really nice tent next to the hotel, and then they have a big banquet hall downstairs, and then Church Landing, which is also part of the same hotel as the Chase House. They have a huge tent that they set up outside. They have a really nice banquet hall downstairs, and the grounds are just spectacular. A lot of people choose to get married in the gazebo, but I've seen people get married outside right near the tent as well. Another very popular wedding destination is the Margate, which is on Paugus Bay in the town of Laconia. They have a huge grassy area where they can set up hundreds of chairs. Their property is so big they have room for more than one wedding tent. They also have multiple buildings where you and your guests can stay. The nice thing is all the buildings lead to the grassy areas, so no matter where you or your guests are staying, it's just an easy walk out to the wedding yard. There may be other wedding facilities on the lake that I'm not aware of, but no matter where you choose to have your event, you're going to have a beautiful day because the lake is just such a beautiful area. When you spend time at the lake, you definitely want to swim, and if you're staying at a hotel, there's usually swimming right at the hotel. However, if you're just coming up for the day or staying away from the lake, it might be a little harder to find a place to swim. At Lake George, there's at least 2 swimming areas that we're aware of. There's a small swim area at Shepherd Park. The water is relatively shallow in the area, and it looked like it came up to most people's waists. There's a large swimming area at $1 Million Beach. They say it's called $1 Million Beach because it cost $1 million to ship in the sand. There's a huge parking area at the beach and a really nice beach house where you can change and use the bathrooms. Adjacent to $1 Million Beach is another swimming area, and this one is actually for dogs. There's signs up that say no swimming, but people were swimming there. At Lake Winnipesaukee, there's really no area for your dog to swim, so people just let them swim wherever they can. One popular area is Heskey Park, but unfortunately it's right next to the boat ramp, so you risk having your dog get hit by a boat when you're letting it swim there. Or it could also maybe get hit by a car coming out of the water. As for areas where the general public can swim, Lake Winnipesaukee isn't the best. Unfortunately, most of the good areas to swim are private, and they're usually open only to residents of that particular town. There is Weirs Beach, which is very large, and it's a great area to swim, but it's very crowded. The park fills up quickly, so you want to get there early. One nice thing about Weirs Beach is they also allow picnicking, so there's always families setting up picnic tables and having barbecues and things like that. Both Lake George and Lake Winnipesaukee have lots of activities to do, even if you don't own a boat. One of the funnest things to do is take a sightseeing cruise, and neither lake disappoints. Lake George has 2 companies that run sightseeing cruises, and both of them have unique boats. We took a cruise on Lake George, and it was really long, like over 2 hours or something, but it took us all over the lake and was really neat. One of the companies have a boat which looks like a steamboat because it's constantly pouring steam out the top, and it also has a paddle wheel, which is really cool. I believe that cruise is only 1 hour though. There's 3 boats that cruise around Lake Winnipesaukee. One is the MS Mount Washington, which is really big. I think it's over 200 feet. There's also the Spirit of Winnipesaukee, and then my favorite is the Sophie C, which is a mail boat that you can actually go on and deliver mail to people on the islands. That's a really fun cruise to take because the people on the islands are always really excited to get their mail. They all run down and greet you and say hello, and it's like a little party at the dock when the boat shows up. At Lake George, there's also all kinds of activities you can do as a family. There's small amusement parks where you can go on a merry-go-round and ride little rides for kids. Also at Lake George, there's plenty of shopping. Because it's a bigger area, there's all kinds of stores to go into. And one thing that really surprised me about Lake George is the nightlife. There were people all over the place, families walking all around, and it was just really busy. I didn't even realize that it was a popular area at night until we saw this sign here, and it made me realize that this place doesn't seem to shut down until very late at night. Lake Winnipesaukee also has a lot of activities that are really fun. Most of the main activities happen in an area called Weirs Beach. It's also home to the Laconia Bike Week, which is one of the largest bike weeks in America. Just like Lake George, there's lots of little amusements for kids, arcades to go into, just a lot of neat little things. Plus, in this area, you can get the cruise boats that take you around the lake. About 5 minutes from the Weirs Beach area is the Fun Spot, which is the world's largest arcade. In the town of Meredith, there's a recreation center called Eagle, which is actually lake spelled backwards. It's a place where you can rent kayaks. You can also charter the Miss Meredith, which is a really old wooden Chris Craft boat. But no matter what you rent from Eagle, you can always go past the gazebo at Church Landing, which is a really fun and popular area to hang out. As far as shopping at Lake Winnipesaukee, there are a lot of little boutiques and gift stores that are actually really cool places to pick up books, hats, shirts, souvenirs, furniture, and all kinds of other cool things. As far as nightlife at Lake Winnipesaukee, that really depends on where you are. If you're in the town of Meredith, there's really not much going on. It's mostly people coming in from their islands to eat at one of the nearby restaurants. The Weirs Beach area has some bars and restaurants, so they tend to stay open late. Plus, they have fireworks in the summer on most weekends, and that's kind of cool. Overall, both lakes are really fun to visit. Each one has unique features that make it different than the other, but you can't go wrong to visit either lake. If boating is your goal and you want to just boat all day, I think Lake Winnipesaukee is better. If shopping and doing touristy things is something you're into, I would say Lake George is probably better. But again, both lakes are great, and if you can, I would suggest visiting each, and then you can decide for yourself which one you prefer. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions about either lake, please leave a message in the comments below and I'll be happy to answer. As always, thanks for watching and have a great day.